Let me ask you a question, not the kind you answer with words, but the kind that lingers in your thoughts long after it's asked. What if the way you're living isn't broken, but it's not aligned? That was me. A week ago, I wasn't in crisis. I wasn't failing, but I was coasting. And the most dangerous place in life isn't the bottom, it's the middle. The place where things are fine, but not fulfilling. So I made a decision, not a dramatic one. I didn't quit my job or move to a mountaintop. I just chose 5 small habits, 5 adjustments, not to what I do, but how I think. And in 7 days, something shifted. Not everything, but enough to matter. Enough to notice. Enough to keep going. Let me share them with you. Every morning, I gave myself just 10 minutes of silence. No phone, no scrolling, no news, just me, a pen and a notebook. Not to write a plan, but to ask why. Why do I care about the things I say I care about? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Most of us start the day like we're being shot out of a cannon, but direction matters more than speed. 10 minutes of stillness helped me start with purpose, not panic. Most of us begin our day reacting. An alarm jolts us awake, notifications buzz, and our minds are already sprinting before we've even had a moment to ask ourselves a simple question: why? Why am I doing what I'm doing today? What actually matters? Who do I want to be? This is the silent tragedy of modern life, not that we're doing the wrong things, but that we're doing the right things for the wrong reasons, or worse, without knowing why at all. Clarity isn't a luxury. It's not something reserved for people who have more time or less responsibility. Clarity is the foundation of intentional living. And it doesn't come from hustle. It comes from stillness. When I first tried setting aside 10 minutes of silence in the morning, I'll admit it felt strange, unproductive even. I sat there, just me, a pen, a notebook, and the uncomfortable quiet of my own thoughts. No email, no to-do list, no scrolling, just space. But within that space, something surprising happened. I began to hear my own voice again. Not the voice shaped by others' expectations, deadlines, or social media, but the quiet, steady voice that reminded me who I was and what mattered to me. Stillness, I realized, is not inactivity. It's active listening. It's a deliberate pause before the noise takes over. It's giving your mind room to breathe, your heart room to speak, and your purpose room to stretch its legs. In that quiet, I didn't find answers immediately, but I found better questions. Questions like, what am I running from? Or what am I running toward? And what if today didn't need to be productive to be meaningful? In those 10 minutes, I wasn't trying to meditate, journal, or solve anything. I was simply practicing presence, being fully where I was without trying to fix, change, or analyze it. It's amazing how loud your own intuition becomes when everything else quiets down. That stillness became a mirror. Some mornings it showed me peace. Other mornings it showed me tension, fear, or distraction. But even that was a gift, because what we notice we can change. Over time, I began to realize how much this simple habit influenced the rest of my day. Instead of being pulled in 10 directions by urgency, I started my day rooted in clarity. I could respond instead of react. I was less scattered, less anxious, more present in conversations, and more deliberate in my right. I stopped saying yes to everything just to feel useful. I started choosing based on what aligned with my values. And that's what stillness does. It restores alignment. When you give yourself even a few quiet moments each day to listen inward, you begin to lead your life instead of just manage it. You become aware of what's true for you. And that awareness is everything. It's not about getting more done, it's about doing the right things for the right reasons, with the right heart. Over time, I began to realize how much this simple habit influenced the rest of my day. Instead of being pulled in 10 directions by urgency, I started my day rooted in clarity. I could respond instead of react. I was less scattered, less anxious, more present in conversations, and more deliberate in my right. I stopped saying yes to everything just to feel useful. I started choosing based on what aligned with my values. And that's what stillness does. It restores alignment. When you give yourself even a few quiet moments each day to listen inward, you begin to lead your life instead of just manage it. You become aware of what's true for you. And that awareness is everything. It's not about getting more done, it's about doing the right things for the right reasons, with the right heart. Clarity doesn't shout. It doesn't interrupt. It waits for you in the quiet. And if you're willing to meet it there, even for just 10 minutes, it will change the way you move through the world. Because clarity isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing what matters now. And when you have that, everything else begins to fall into place. We are taught to be polite, to keep the peace, to avoid discomfort. And somewhere along the way, many of us begin to confuse honesty with conflict. We soften our words, we swallow our needs, we smile through things we disagree with, not because we're dishonest people, but because we think it's easier, kinder, safer. But over time, all those small avoidances, those unspoken truths start to pile up. And what they build isn't peace. It's disconnection. Disconnection from others, and more dangerously, disconnection from ourselves. I decided to try a simple challenge: speak one truth a day. That's it, just one. Not a grand confession. Not brutal honesty. Just a moment where I would say what I truly meant, even if it was uncomfortable. What I didn't expect was how difficult it would be at first. We become so accustomed to softening our edges that speaking plainly can feel radical. Saying, "I'm not okay today," instead of "I'm fine. Or "that doesn't work for me," instead of a vague, or "I disagree," instead of silently nodding along. These are small moments, but they hold tremendous power. The first few times I spoke my truth, I felt exposed, vulnerable. But almost instantly, I also felt lighter. There is a strange kind of strength that comes from saying exactly what you mean, even if your voice shakes, not because you want to provoke, not because you want to be right, but because it's real. And what's real connects us far more than what's polite. Speaking one truth a day isn't just about communication, it's about alignment. Every time I told the truth, I was aligning my outer world with my inner world. I was refusing to abandon myself for the sake of someone else's comfort. And that act, repeated daily, started to build something strong inside me. Not arrogance, not self-righteousness, but integrity. Integrity is the quiet confidence that you are living in a way that respects your values. It doesn't mean you're always liked. It means you're always honest with yourself first and with others second. And that kind of honesty becomes magnetic. People can feel when you're being real. They may not always agree, but they trust you. Because truth, when spoken with care, creates safety. It sets a standard. It says, this is a space where we can be honest with each other. Over time, I began to notice something else. The more I spoke my truth, the more I created room for others to do the same. Vulnerability invites vulnerability. When you say, "I'm struggling with this," you give someone else permission to say, "Me too." When you admit you made a mistake, you model what it looks like to take responsibility. One truth a day started to ripple outward, not just changing how I felt, but changing how people responded to me. Of course, truth requires discernment. Not every thought needs to be voiced. Honesty without empathy becomes cruelty. But when truth is guided by kindness and respect, it becomes a tool for connection, not division. It opens doors instead of closing them. It builds bridges instead of walls. So why does one truth a day build inner strength? Because it reminds you every single day that your voice matters, that your needs matter, that you don't have to hide or shrink or pretend. And that kind of self-respect builds something unshakable inside you. You stop fearing rejection because you're no longer rejecting yourself. You stop seeking validation because you already know what's true. And in a world that often values image over substance, one daily act of honesty becomes an act of quiet rebellion. A reminder that strength isn't about being hard. It's about being real. And real is always enough. We often move through life assuming that connection will simply happen. That if we're in the same room on the same call and the same must be connected. But presence is not the same as attention, and being near someone doesn't mean we're truly with them. Real connection doesn't occur by default, it has to be created. And the truth is, we're lonelier than we've ever been, not because we lack people, but because we've forgotten how to see them. One of the most powerful habits I started was this: make one person feel truly seen every day. It sounds small. It sounds simple. But it's not. It requires slowing down, putting your agenda aside, and choosing to be fully present with someone else, not to fix them, impress them, or entertain them, but just to witness them, to give them the kind of attention that says, "You matter. I see you." This might be a friend or a colleague, a partner, or even a stranger. The point isn't who, it's how. It's saying their name when you greet them, looking them in the eye when they speak, listening without formulating your next reply. It's asking, "How are you?" and meaning it. And if the answer is not great, it's staying in that space instead of rushing to change the subject. When I began doing this, deliberately seeking out one moment of deep, intentional presence a day, I started to notice something shift. Not just in others, but in myself. I was less distracted, less caught up in my own stress. It was like giving attention away actually grounded me more deeply in who I was. I found myself connecting more with people I'd known for years just because I was finally showing up for them with my full self, not just my role, my title, or my agenda. One day, it was the receptionist at my gym. I paused instead of walking past, asked her how her morning was, and really listened. She lit up. Another day, it was a coworker who usually kept to himself. I invited him into lunch, and in 20 quiet minutes, I learned more about him than I had in 2 years of hallway hellos. These weren't monumental gestures, but they didn't need to be. Because we're not starving for attention, we're starving for authenticity. For someone to cut through the noise and connect with us in a way that's real. There's a myth that connection is about big emotional moments. And while those have their place, most connection is built in the ordinary through consistency, presence, and care. We don't need more friends, followers, or contacts. We need more witnesses, people who know us not just for what we do, but for who we are. People we choose to see and be seen by. Creating connection daily also helped me in a surprising way. It made me feel less alone. The more I saw others, the more I felt seen, because attention is reciprocal. Empathy expands in both directions. And I realized that in giving someone else the gift of presence, I was receiving it too. The most meaningful relationships in our lives aren't the ones that happen to us. They're the ones we nurture on purpose. And that starts with one small habit, making just one person a day feel truly seen. It could be a smile, a conversation, a moment of silence held with someone who's hurting. These little acts of presence add up. They build trust. They build community. And in a world full of noise and speed, they become sacred. We don't find connection by waiting for it. We create it one genuine moment at a time. We tend to think of confidence as a prerequisite for action. That we need to feel ready, certain, and sure of ourselves before we take the leap, before we speak up in a meeting, apply for the opportunity, set a boundary, or try something new. But the truth is, that moment of complete confidence rarely comes before the action. More often, confidence is the result of action. And the action, it usually begins with courage. Courage and confidence are not the same thing. Confidence says, I've done this before, I know I can do it again. Courage says, I've never done this and I'm afraid, but I'm going to try anyway. Courage is raw. It's uncertain. It often shows up with shaking hands and a racing heart. But it leads. It's the first to step forward when there's no guarantee of success. And when you follow through with that first step, no matter the outcome, confidence begins to grow. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. I started a simple habit that helped me rewire this pattern in my life. Every day, do the hardest thing first. Not the longest task or the most urgent one, the hardest one. The one I was most likely to avoid. It might be an uncomfortable conversation I needed to have, a project I was procrastinating on, or a personal decision I had been delaying. I noticed that each day there was always one thing that created resistance inside me. That was the thing I tackled first. At first it was uncomfortable. I wanted to ease into the day, build momentum, and then work up the courage. But I realized something important. The longer I delayed the hard thing, the heavier it became. It wasn't the task itself that was draining, it was the avoidance of it. But when I chose courage early in the day, I felt something powerful afterward, a relief, clarity, and most surprisingly, a deep sense of pride. Not because I did it perfectly, but because I did it at all. And that's where confidence is born, in the doing. Not in perfection, not in praise, but in proving to yourself that you can face what you fear. The more I practiced daily courage, the more my internal dialogue began to shift. It moved from, can I do this? To, I've done hard things before, I can do this too. That's confidence, not a lack of fear, but a track record of bravery. This shift didn't just change how I approached my testing. It changed how I showed up in my relationships, in my work, in my self-talk. I stopped waiting for the right moment. I stopped hoping I'd suddenly wake up feeling bold. I understood that boldness is something we practice, not something we magically acquire. And the more I practiced courage, the more natural it became. It stopped feeling like a leap and started feeling like a rhythm. What's powerful about this approach is that it builds self-trust. Every time you choose courage, you teach yourself that you can rely on your own strength, even when it's uncomfortable. You stop outsourcing your confidence to outcomes, approval, or external validation. And you begin to build it from the inside out. And that kind of confidence, the kind forged in courage, is unshakable. In a world that celebrates certainty, courage is often overlooked. But it's where everything begins. All growth, all change, all progress starts with a decision to act in the face of fear. So don't wait to feel confident before you move. Move with courage and let confidence catch up to you. Because courage leads. And confidence always, always follows. There's a common misconception that transformation comes in grand, sweeping gestures. We think that in order to change our lives, we need to do something massive, quit the job, move to a new city, start from scratch. And while those moments can be powerful, they're also rare. The truth is, most of the progress we make in life doesn't come from bold leaps. It comes from quiet, consistent steps. It comes from the small wins we often overlook. I used to measure my days by what I finished. If I didn't check enough boxes, if I didn't accomplish something big, the day felt wasted. But that mindset left me drained and discouraged more often than not. So I made a shift. Instead of asking, what did I finish today? I began asking, what did I honor today? Did I honor my values? Did I honor my health, my creativity, my relationships, my boundaries? That single change reframed everything. Because when we start to track progress through the lens of intention, we begin to notice the small wins that actually move us forward. Drinking water instead of another coffee, small win. Saying no to something that would have stretched you too thin, small win. Showing up to the gym, even if it was just for 20 minutes, small win. Writing 200 words when you wanted to write 2,000, still a win. These moments may seem minor, but they are the building blocks of change. The power of small wins is that they are repeatable. They are sustainable. And most importantly, they create momentum. Momentum isn't created by doing everything at once, it's created by doing something consistently. One small win leads to another. And as they accumulate, they begin to change how you see yourself. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who always falls short or gives up. You start seeing yourself as someone who shows up, someone who tries, someone who makes progress. That shift in identity is critical because we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems, our habits, and our beliefs. And those are all shaped by the actions we take daily. The small, invisible wins that no one claps for, but that compound over time. There's also something deeply validating about celebrating small wins. In a world that constantly demands more hustle, more output, more productivity, acknowledging a small win is an act of resistance. It's saying, this mattered. I matter. This effort counts. And that validation doesn't just feel good, it fuels you. It gives you the energy to keep going. At the end of each day, I started writing down one win. Just one. Sometimes it was personal, like managing my anxiety during a difficult conversation. Sometimes it was practical, like finally organizing a cluttered space. Other times it was emotional, choosing to forgive or to be kind to myself. No matter how small, I wrote it down. And over time, those wins became proof that I was growing, that I was moving, that I was capable. Progress doesn't have to be loud to be real. It doesn't have to be Instagram worthy to be meaningful. Some of the most life-changing days look entirely ordinary from the outside. But on the inside, a quiet battle is being won. A new habit is being formed. A belief is being rewritten. So if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed, stop looking for a breakthrough and start looking for a small win. Then build from there. Because small wins create a path. And step by step, they carry you toward the life you're trying to build, not through force, but through faith. Not all at once, but one choice at a time. Change doesn't always announce itself with thunder. It doesn't always arrive with grand declarations or dramatic turning points. More often, it slips in quietly through small decisions, subtle shifts, and barely noticeable adjustments. And yet, over time, these tiny shifts can alter the entire trajectory of a life. We're conditioned to believe that in order to create real change, we need to overhaul everything. But the truth is, transformation often begins with the decision to do just one thing differently. I remember realizing that much of my stress wasn't coming from the big problems, it was coming from the accumulation of small, repeated moments where I was misaligned. Waking up late and rushing through the morning, saying yes when I meant no, avoiding a task because of fear, skipping the walk, the call, the pause. Each on its own was. Start listening. Noticing when something didn't feel right. Asking myself why. Taking small actions based on those answers, stepping back, adjusting plans, honoring my limits. These weren't loud or impressive changes, but they slowly rebuilt something much deeper, self-trust. Tiny shifts can also change how we relate to others, like replacing judgment with curiosity. Instead of assuming someone's motives, I began to ask more questions. Instead of reacting with defensiveness, I tried pausing even for a second to see if I could respond instead. These moments didn't transform my relationships overnight, but they changed the tone. They created more openness, more understanding. And when that becomes a pattern, it changes everything. The beauty of tiny shifts is that they lower the barrier to entry. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to wait for the perfect plan. You just need to move 1 degree in a better direction. Because if you shift your path by even a single degree and keep walking, you end up at a completely different place than you would have otherwise. That's the power of trajectory. And what's remarkable is how quickly momentum builds. One small win leads to another. One healthy choice inspires the next. One moment of honesty encourages another. Before long, you're not just reacting to life, you're shaping it. Not by trying to change everything at once, but by changing what you consistently. Too often we underestimate the significance of small choices because we're addicted to speed and spectacle. But sustainable change doesn't come from extremes. It comes from awareness, from intention, from gently choosing differently. And over time, those choices create identity. They become habits. They rewrite your story. So if you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure of how to begin, stop looking for the next big move. Look for one tiny shift you can make today. One question you can ask yourself. One moment you can reclaim. You don't need to overhaul your life. You just need to begin nudging it in the right direction. And trust that with time, those nudges will become momentum, and that momentum will carry you somewhere entirely new.